Happy President's Day. Here's what we should really be celebrating for this and every President's Day. What's in the news with stories on IRS denying passports, guard dogs, civil forfeiture reforms, zero tolerance, and FBI failure. Also, an Ask Me Anything segment where I answer your tough questions. This episode is brought to you by ZenCash, a cryptocurrency that infuses privacy, anonymity, and security done right. Also brought to you by NordVPN, the fastest, easiest to use service to protect your online presence that I've ever seen.
Welcome to The Lava Flow, channeling the flow of information to the libertarian, anarcho-capitalist, voluntarist, and agorist community. Find us at thelavaflow.com. Here's your host, Roger Paxton.
Thank you for joining me this week. From the state that is the home of Pittsburgh, New Hampshire, the largest town in all of New England that covers roughly 300 square miles but has a population of under 1,000. This is the show that will bring you the people, places, and events that everyone in the Liberty Rebellion needs to know. You can catch me on Twitter at the Lava Flow Pod. This is episode 82, President's Day, and it's Tuesday, February 20th, 2018, when there have already been more than 165 people killed by police this year. And the United States debt clock shows us at $20,634,770,000,000 in debt. What's wrestling my jimmies this week? You're about to find out. Let's do it to it. This week is President's Day, a day we're supposed to celebrate all U.S. presidents, past and present. Yeah, right. But the history of the day is just ridiculous. Originally established in 1885 in recognition of President George Washington, the holiday became popularly known as President's Day after it was moved as part of 1971's Uniform Monday Holiday Act, an attempt to create more three-day weekends for the nation's workers. You heard that right. The day was literally created to give folks a new day off work, which is fine and dandy if you work for the government. But fuck all you peasants, just like me, who had to go to work on that day. So in order to celebrate President's Day, let's take a look at the worst presidents our country has ever had. All 43 of them. Well, unfortunately, we can't do that since this show is only half an hour long. So let's knock that down to the very worst of the worst. We're going to start this list with George W. Bush, since he's someone that we're all pretty much familiar with. While he did give us significant tax cuts and he opposed the Kyoto Protocol, there's little else he did that was worth a shit. I mean, thanks to this fuckstick, my kids have never known a time when the USA was not at war. He invaded Afghanistan and Iraq, supported the Ethiopian invasion of Somalia, attempted a coup in Venezuela, provoked a Palestinian civil war after Hamas elections, attempted to destabilize Pakistan, and orchestrated a civic coup in Bolivia. He's also primarily responsible for the USA Patriot Act, which has stripped every man, woman, and child in the world of basic civil liberties. And he created the Department of Homeland Insecurity. He also brought back torture and indefinite incarceration of people without any charges or convictions. He's also responsible for Sarbanes-Oxley, the Energy Policy Act, the Bipartisan Campaign Reform Act, and No Child Left Behind. He also pissed away money on things like expanding Medicare, trying to overthrow Iran's government, the vision for space exploration, $1 billion for tsunami spending, funding Somali warlords, and hundreds or even thousands of other projects. Also, thanks to W, we see an expanded drug war, more military abroad than we've had in decades, 1 million plus people on the no-fly list, free speech zones, and TSA searches. And he was also partly responsible for encouraging easy credit, which led to the housing bubble that popped spectacularly. He literally left the American people in more debt and more danger than any president before him. Next on my list is one that our government indoctrination centers have told us for decades or longer to revere as a hero, Abraham Lincoln. Hell, I think the only good he ever did was not completing his second term, frankly. He's directly responsible for the murder of 350,000 Americans because of his attempt to keep the Union together. A union that has a founding document, I might add, that specifically allows for throwing off rulers. He destroyed the 10th Amendment and shat on much of the rest of the Constitution as well. He suspended habeas corpus by imprisoning 15,000 political opponents without a trial. He shut down newspapers, restricted firearms ownership, rigged elections, started a draft, and then murdered people protesting against that draft. He even made life-saving medicine contraband during the Civil War. But let's continue to revere this motherfucker. No thanks. And now we get to Woodrow Wilson, a president that libertarians love to hate because he is responsible for creating the Federal Reserve and for bringing about the income tax. But that's not all he did. He also imposed the 8-hour workday for railroad workers, forcing many employers to pay more money for labor. He helped create the League of Nations, the Espionage Act of 1917, and the Sedition Act of 1918. The Federal Trade Commission exists because of this douche, as did Prohibition and the Harrison Narcotics Act. He also implemented a draft himself, turning innocent civilians into slaves, and he's responsible for the Palmer raids, which captured and deported more than 500 anarchists for no crime whatsoever. But my least favorite president of all will not be much of a surprise to you guys. Franklin Dickhead Roosevelt. Now, I may have mistaken his middle name, but I'm not quite sure. Look, Roosevelt was horrible on economics. Hell, he was horrible on everything. He instituted his New Deal, which gave us Social Security. He continued the Great Depression by not allowing the free market to do its job. He really began the massive welfare state in this country. He provoked the Japanese into attacking America by imposing oil embargoes and other restrictions, and then he got pissed off when they did attack us. There's even a really good chance that he knew the attack was going to happen at Pearl Harbor, and he didn't warn anyone. He forbade anyone from owning gold and seized millions of dollars in gold from civilians. Then he arbitrarily raised the price of gold after it was all taken to help bail out the Federal Reserve. He almost single-handedly destroyed the U.S. economy with programs like the National Labor Relations Act, National Industrial Recovery Act, Public Works Administration, National Recovery Administration, Works Progress Administration, Civilian Conservation Corps, Social Security, price fixing, minimum wages, extreme tax increases, the Tennessee Valley Authority, the Agriculture Adjustment Act, and many, many more. This guy never met a government he didn't like. He also was responsible for the Marijuana Tax Act of 1937, which was a first step in the prohibition of cannabis. And he made slaves of more than 10 million Americans by drafting them, and made slaves out of German, Italian, and Japanese American citizens by putting them in internment camps all over the country. He also authorized the Manhattan Project, which killed hundreds of thousands of innocent men, women, and children. So, this President's Day, and every single one following this one, let's celebrate the eventual removal of presidents from our lives. Until that amazing day comes, we will look forward to such a day. After that day comes, we can use President's Day as a reminder of why having rulers is destructive to mankind and freedom. Fuck all presidents and all rulers in the neck.
Have you subscribed to the Lava Flow on iTunes or any mobile device yet? Then what's wrong with you? Go to thelavaflow.com/subscribe so you don't miss a minute of the show. And while you're subscribing, make sure to leave me a 5-star rating and review the show to help others find our podcast. thelavaflow.com/subscribe.
This is Chris Spangle, and I am the host of We Are Libertarians, which you can find in iTunes, Google Play, or at wearelibertarians.com. We are a podcast that brings you all of the irreverence that modern politics deserves by examining current events from a libertarian perspective. So please, check us out at wearelibertarians.com.
What's in the news? The news you need to know from a libertarian perspective.
In debtor's prison news, beginning this month, the Internal Revenue Service will begin denying passports to some American citizens with unpaid taxes and in some cases, revoking the passports of Americans with tax delinquencies. The government will, in effect, place those with unpaid taxes under arrest, effectively denying them their right to travel. To be clear, we're not talking about Americans who have been convicted of tax evasion or tax fraud, or who are awaiting trial on charges related to tax matters. These Americans have not been charged with a crime at all, much less convicted of one. They simply have unpaid taxes amounting to $50,000 or more. More precisely, they have an unpaid IRS liability amounting to $50,000. The IRS's aggressive schedule of interest and penalties for unpaid taxes ensures that a relatively small amount of unpaid taxes can turn into a $50,000 plus liability with remarkable speed. The IRS has remarkable investigative tools and collection procedures at its disposal. It can seize assets, garnish wages, put liens on property, and more. Still, there are occasions when it finds itself unable to collect a debt. Sometimes that's because it's dealing with a crafty person who manages to hide his income and property from the government. More often, it's because it's dealing with a person who simply can't pay. The right to travel is like the right to free speech, the right to be free from unlawful search and seizure, and the right to petition the government for redress of grievances, a basic civil right. Americans are supposedly free people who have a human right to come and go as they please, irrespective of the preferences of any pissant bureaucrat in Washington. Yes, we curtail people's rights in certain circumstances, when they have been charged with a crime and convicted after due process. Tax fraud is considered a crime by our government. However, having unpaid taxes is not. This effectively makes the U.S. a debtor's prison for these folks who've had their passports revoked. They're not able to escape legally. This also makes the debtor even more of a slave, because they're not given freedom to move by their masters. Will we need to create an underground railroad for people who owe the IRS money now? In guard dog news, KSDK in Portland, Oregon, put 3 dogs to the test to find out what dogs would do if a burglar tried to break into your home and inadvertently found out that cops killing dogs because the cops are cowards holds even less weight than they thought. Professional dog trainer James Remick acted as the intruder, wearing a protective bite suit as a precaution. He would then knock on the front door and enter the home to see how the dog would react. The first test was of a 5-year-old border collie named Scout. When Remick entered the home, it took nearly 20 seconds before Scout even uttered a bark. He made no aggressive move toward Remick at all. The second test was a pit bull mix named Lucy. When the intruder approached the front door, Lucy jumped up on the couch. She barked, growled, and appeared ready to pounce, but when the intruder came into the home, Lucy bolted. She ran to a nearby hallway. Test 3 was a half Shih Tzu, half Poodle mix, also named Lucy. Lucy showed no fear when the intruder knocked on the door. The little dog barked and barked. When the intruder came inside the home, Lucy retreated, but didn't stop barking. The professional trainer said he wasn't surprised that all 3 dogs barked and retreated. They aren't trained to engage aggressively with humans. Quote, "They know how to fight another dog. They don't know how to fight a man," said Remick. "It's different for them. They have to size it up. What am I supposed to do here?" Remick explained if a homeowner wants a dog for protection, the dog should be professionally trained. The owner should participate in the training process. As Remick said, this is not a surprising result at all. Even police canine units have to be very specifically trained to attack a human being, and cops know this. It's not natural for a dog to attack a human, even to protect their own turf. But cops don't give a shit about facts. They will still blow your puppy away for looking at them wrong and claim self-defense. One cryptocurrency project that I'm most excited about right now is ZenCash, with privacy, anonymity, and security done right. You can read all about ZenCash at thelavaflow.com/zen. Now look, I've read a ton of white papers on crypto, and this is the first one I've read that mentioned voluntary and voluntarist not once but 7 times. These are our people, and they are on the right track to mix great technology, excellent marketing, and awesome uses for their product. These guys get it, and they understand what crypto is all about. And you can even get free ZenCash right now by going to the ZenCash faucet at thelavaflow.com/freezen. Now, this is a project, guys, that I believe in 100%. So much so that I have staked some of my own Zen to run a secure node on their network. So don't miss out on checking out this awesome project at thelavaflow.com/Zen. In legalized theft news, in January, Republican state senators in Alabama introduced legislation to reform civil forfeiture. The bill made the radical suggestion that property rights cannot be taken away without due process. Imagine that. It also aims to curb abuses by directing what does get seized to the state's general fund rather than to the police departments themselves, thereby ending a practice that's been called policing for profit. The Alabama Sheriff's Association and Alabama District Attorneys Association are not pleased, of course. The directors of both organizations penned an op-ed in defense of civil forfeiture. They opened with blatant dishonesty, claiming that the practice only targets criminals, when in at least a quarter of Alabama forfeiture cases alone, charges are never filed, let alone convictions made. The op-ed is actually refreshing, in that the authors don't hide the fact that police departments pursue civil forfeiture for personal gain. Speaking of the reformers' plans to prevent police departments from keeping the money and assets they seize, they write, "Sending the proceeds of forfeiture to the state's general fund would result in fewer busts of drugs and stolen property rings. What incentive would local police and sheriffs have to invest manpower, resources, and time in these operations if they don't receive proceeds to cover their costs?" This is just disgusting, folks. But I have to give them props for being completely fucking honest about it. But isn't it the job of law enforcement to enforce the law? Isn't that what they're paid to do? Given that many violent crimes happen in the absence of property on the scene to seize, does this mean that Alabama's law enforcement has no incentive to spend resources fighting them? Now, clearly, drug offenses are victimless crimes, and we all want to see an end to the drug war. But for them to throw in stolen property rings makes it clear their intention is only to stir up dissent and stoke people's fears. Similar to how the government shuts down only the specific items during a government shutdown that will induce the most ire in people. It's all a sham, window dressing, a lie perpetrated on the people for personal gain. But this is, sadly, typical of government agents. In zero tolerance, zero logic news, a high school in Ledyard, Connecticut called the cops on a 17-year-old student who made a non-threatening comment about a gun to class. Police then arrested him, and he now faces charges of breaching the peace. I can't make this shit up, folks. According to Ledyard High School principal Amanda Fagan, the student said, quote, "I could buy an AR-15 or something similar. That's it." Fagan said in a statement, quote, "In an abundance of caution, despite the fact that this student is a minor who cannot, in fact, legally purchase such a weapon, we made the decision to consult with the Ledyard police, who made the decision to take the student into custody." The student made the comment during his first period class. The principal was quickly notified, and she made the decision to call the cops, even though it was clear to her that he was neither making a threat nor in possession of any actual guns. In a message to parents, Fagan stressed that the student presented absolutely no danger. Fagan said, quote, "The student in question does not have access to firearms at home. There was never any threat to the safety of your children or the adults who teach and tend to them each day." The Associated Press reports that the student will appear before juvenile court to face charges of breaching the peace. Fagan also said in her message, quote, "The offense is akin to joking about a bomb in the airport. One simply doesn't do it." You know, that's true. In the unfree society that we live in, where we have no real freedom of speech, she's absolutely correct. You simply don't do it, or you can be arrested for exercising your right to speak, just like this young man was. When you live in fear of being carted away for using words, especially in a country with a document that is supposed to protect that right, you realize really quickly how unfree you truly are. Unfit to exist. Are you looking for a way to protect your online presence quickly, easily, and inexpensively while still surfing the net with high speed? Well, NordVPN is the best way that I've ever found to do just that. With over 2,500 servers worldwide, they cover every continent except Antarctica. But, as they say, that's only because penguins just don't get the internet. They also offer double data encryption, which encrypts data not once, but twice. And they never log what you do and where you go on the internet. Also, NordVPN is fast, the fastest VPN service that I've ever used. They have apps for Windows, Mac, iOS, and Android, so you can protect all of your traffic from all of your devices with NordVPN. Starting as low as $3.29 per month, they're also inexpensive, and they take Bitcoin too. With NordVPN, you can securely access any website from anywhere around the world, safely share files via P2P networks, and enjoy the fastest VPN experience without compromising your online security and privacy. Get signed up for the VPN service that I personally use every time I hit the internet at thelavaflow.com/VPN. Again, that's thelavaflow.com/VPN. In school shooting news, the FBI failed to act on a tip about Nicholas Cruz, the confessed shooter in the Parkland, Florida school massacre, the Bureau said in a statement. Look, I don't normally talk about the big news stories of the day, and you guys know this. There are tons of shows out there that do that, and most of them do it well, but that's not my thing. I prefer to talk about the underserved stories that really show how fucked up our situation is and how unfree we are, than to talk about what the media and politicians decide that you should be talking about right now. But this I felt was important. The FBI said the caller provided information about Cruz's gun ownership, desire to kill people, erratic behavior, and disturbing social media posts, as well as the potential of him conducting a school shooting. The information should have been assessed as a potential threat to life, the Bureau said. Attorney General Jeff Sessions ordered a review Friday into how the Justice Department and FBI respond to indications of potential violence. The Justice Department will review not just how the Cruz tip was missed, but how authorities respond to similar situations, Sessions said. The FBI is just not capable of tracking or investigating every potential person they get a tip on. And this is a good thing, to be honest. This is why a national police force taking in terabytes of data on a regular basis about all of us is completely idiotic and useless, except to encroach on our rights to privacy. It serves no good purpose at all.
Exercise your free market muscles by going to thelavaflow.com/support and giving a per episode donation of as little as $1 an episode, or use Bitcoin. Get exclusive content, rewards, and help the Lava Flow become fiscally neutral while providing you more content. thelavaflow.com/support.
It's time to shake up your podcast feed, folks, by subscribing to Lions of Liberty, the only libertarian variety show out there. Spend Mondays with me, Mark Claire, as I feature in-depth interviews with great names in the libertarian community and fun roundtable discussions.
Electric Liberty Land with me, Brian McWilliams, every Wednesday, your weekly dose of comedy, culture, and liberty.
And Felony Fridays with me, John Odermatt, where I expose injustice in the broken criminal justice system.
Find us on iTunes, Stitcher, and at lionsofliberty.com.
Ask me anything. Roger will answer your questions about, well, anything. Do you have a question for Roger? Email ama@thelavaflow.com or add your question to the latest AMA thread in the Pax Libertas Productions Facebook group.
It's that time again where I answer your questions. As I mentioned last week, I have a bit of a backlog on these questions because the participation I received, frankly, was much larger than I anticipated. So thank you all, guys, for all of your awesome questions. So a huge supporter of the Lava Flow, Ryan P., sent me 5 different questions, and I've already answered a couple. I think this is number 3 out of 5, and I'll get to the others later. His question is, what about matters of national security? Do we have a standing army and a navy? If so, who gives them orders? Who builds, maintains, and updates a large stockpile of conventional and nuclear weapons to ensure the people can defend themselves if necessary? If we don't have a standing army or navy, what happens if the country, or a portion thereof, suddenly finds itself under threat? So, Ryan, the way I see this happening is through insurance companies, more than likely. Essentially, insurance companies will offer war insurance or something of the like for people in a region. That insurance company will collect money from people in that region, completely voluntary, of course, and provide military defense and security. As I mentioned a couple of episodes ago, Robert Murphy, went really in-depth with this topic in his pamphlet Chaos Theory. I also went into more detail on this topic myself based on the Chaos Theory article back in episode 59 of this show in April of last year. You can get to that episode at thelavaflow.com/59. Make sure to check those resources out, and I will have links to those in the show notes to this episode. Thanks for the question, Ryan, and I'll get to your other two later. Mark K. asked, what is the biggest current obstacle to liberty right now, and why is it public education? Mark, that's a great question, and I do agree with you. This is why I say one of the most important things you can do for the future of liberty is to keep your kids out of government indoctrination centers. When your kids are not indoctrinated into what the government wants them to be indoctrinated into, we're all better off, especially your kids. And eventually, I hope to see a mass adoption of homeschooling that will help lead to a destruction of the most dangerous superstition, government. Look, when our kids are not taught to pledge allegiance to a scrap of cloth that represents the most murderous organizations in world history, that being government, this is a beautiful thing. My children have never once said the Pledge of Allegiance, not once in their lives, and I am thrilled by that. They have never set foot in a government indoctrination center. Never. And that makes me so happy. They are not under the thumb of any bureaucrat or teacher. They don't have to ask for permission to go take a piss. They are being raised as strong, independent, and autonomous human beings that know that they can make the world a better place. If you want to change the world, teach your kids that they can actually do it. And guess what? They might actually surprise you and do it. The next question comes from my very good friend and fellow Free Stater, Herschel N. And he asks, if you had the ability to nullify one law in the state of New Hampshire, what would it be? Wow. Herschel, thanks so much, brother. This is another tough one, but it's a great question. As you well know, New Hampshire is so far and above any other state in the Union for freedom, but it's nowhere near perfect. We're working on it. I mean, there are many laws I would change here, but one reason New Hampshire was chosen for the Free State Project is that it already has that live free or die mentality, and many people who live here really do believe in that. But if I had to nullify one law, it would be whatever law attaches New Hampshire to the United States. Now, I fully believe in secession, and I believe we will never truly be free until we can secede from larger governments. No one in Washington, D.C. gives a rat's fuck about our freedom, and they never will. Hell, most people in the New Hampshire state legislature don't give a rat's fuck either. But at least there, the average person can wield some influence thanks to the body being so large and the average constituent body for each rep being so small. But we need to go even further than state secession. We need to have the ability for counties, cities, and towns to secede if their needs and desires and freedoms aren't being respected by the larger governments. And to take that to its natural and most free conclusion, any individual should be able to secede completely as well and be a self-governing individual. That is the only way to truly protect minority rights, because the smallest minority is, after all, the individual, as Ayn Rand said. Now, this is why I'm a regional captain and a financial supporter of the Foundation for New Hampshire Independence. It's one of the most important organizations that I'm currently a part of. Herschel, thanks so much for the question. Another very good friend and Free Stater, Nick B., asked, how do you envision the transition from our current paradigm to Ancapistan? You know, I really don't have an answer for this one, because it could happen in a million different ways, from global war or economic catastrophe causing mass destruction, to freedom building and secession in a small area like New Hampshire, to counter economics, to flat-out buying land and forming a new country like Roger Ver and others are doing with freesociety.com. There are many different ways that it could play out. The one I am as certain as possible won't work is by playing their game. When the main goal of politicians is to rule your life, trying to work with politicians, or even worse, becoming one of them, will never get us anywhere near Ancapistan. And as long as the majority of people in any given area believe in that most dangerous superstition, government, then Ancapistan will never happen in that area. Frankly, of all the ways I can see it happening, I think the most likely is for libertarians to create a new island or territory in international waters through seasteading, or for them to purchase unused land like Roger Ver has in mind. Obviously, the biggest concern with these two options is an attack by a major power or other government. But as we talked about when I answered Ryan's question above, some enterprising individual will create a private defense agency to help mitigate that issue. Now, I think, barring these options, the Free State Project is the next closest on the list to making this happen. Taking a small physical area that's lightly populated, such as New Hampshire, working to educate that population to the benefits of true freedom and independence, and working with that population to bring that about has a small chance of working because it is an enormous task. However, I wouldn't be here if I thought it was an impossible task. At this time, I do believe the Free State Project is our very best shot at true liberty, at least until we see what Roger Ver or someone in seasteading comes up with in the future. Now, I keep a close watch on the news in seasteading and on Roger Ver's idea with free societies, so stay subscribed to this show for any updates on those topics in the future. Thanks so much for that question, Nick. And the last question I have for this week comes from Stephen Rose, host of the new Anarcho-Christian podcast at anarchochristian.com. That's the latest show from Pax Libertas Productions. He asks, I've heard you say a few times that Ayn Rand was a big influence. Do you prefer Ayn Rand's fiction or nonfiction? Do you have a favorite book or quote from her? Yes, I am a big fan of Ayn Rand's philosophy, Stephen. Her philosophy has had a lot of influence on me becoming an atheist and a libertarian, and even though this would probably make her roll over in the grave, an anarchist. However, she, as a human being, left a lot to be desired, frankly, so I'm not really a fan of her as a person, if that makes sense. I also do not subscribe to every tenet of objectivism, although I do believe in many, if not most of them. For example, Ayn Rand and followers of her philosophy were, and still are for the most part, openly critical of anarchist beliefs. However, as Roy A. Childs pointed out in his famous open letter to Ayn Rand, the logical conclusion of objectivism is anarchism. There will be a link in the show notes to this exceptional letter. I really recommend you read it. Picking between her fiction and nonfiction is tough because I appreciate both for different reasons. I love her fiction because she created idealized characters that are very easy to look up to as something to emulate, even though the characters are impossible caricatures. I still find something to look up in all of her heroes and heroines. I even have a dog named Dagny that we named after Dagny Taggart from Atlas Shrugged. I also love her nonfiction because it explains and describes her philosophy in such a way that it is easily understood and appreciated. My favorite fiction book of hers is her magnum opus, Atlas Shrugged, because it does the best of laying out her philosophy in a very entertaining way. My favorite nonfiction book of hers is The Virtue of Selfishness, because it takes the concept of selfishness, something that we're all supposed to denigrate, and shows why it is so important and virtuous. I actually did an episode of this show on the virtue of selfishness that you can hear at thelavaflow.com/57. My all-time favorite quote from one of her books is a line given by the character John Galt in his amazing speech in Atlas Shrugged. He said, "I swear by my life and my love of it that I will never live for the sake of another man, nor ask another man to live for mine." I actually carried a sign with this quote on it at Tea Party and other protests back in the day in Memphis and Arkansas. This was back when the Tea Party was brand spanking new. This quote, more than possibly any other, sums up my life and how I try to live it every day. Stephen, thanks so much for the question. So guys, even after answering all of these questions, I still have 5 questions in my queue. Now, I'll be getting to those questions in another week or two, and also will be giving you an opportunity to ask your questions. The best way to keep an eye out for my posts where you can put your questions is by joining the Pax Libertas fans group on Facebook. I look forward to seeing you guys there. Thank you so much for listening to the show this week. As always, I need to thank my favorite cat herder, Jessica, for her help with the show. For the show notes to this episode, where I put links and other information that's been on the show, go to thelavaflow.com/82. I don't have any new supporters this week, but thanks to all of my awesome supporters, I'm at $261 per episode, or 52.2% of the way towards my next goal of $500. Remember, when I hit this next goal, I will be upping the content that I bring you from half an hour per week to a full hour. I know you want more content from me, and I want to give it to you. So add your pledge today to help me bring you twice the lava flow that you're getting today. So if you do want more of the lava flow, exercise your free market muscles by going to thelavaflow.com/support and giving a per episode donation of as little as $1 an episode, using Federal Reserve notes through Patreon or Bitcoin through Coinbase. I want to be able to bring you more content soon, so make sure to add your donation today to help make that happen. Also, I don't have any new reviews this week on Apple Podcasts. If you have a minute and you want to hear your review on the show, please go to thelavaflow.com/Apple and leave me a rating and a review. All the cool kids are doing it. Thank you to everyone who's left me a rating and a review so far. You guys rock. To all of you who haven't, can you guys help me out and go leave a review for me? Go to thelavaflow.com/Apple to do that now. Until next time, keep striking the root.
Thank you for listening to The Lava Flow at thelavaflow.com. Don't miss an episode. Subscribe now at thelavaflow.com/subscribe. This has been a Pax Libertas Productions podcast.